People who woke up in a different country. What happened? Okay, this is embarrassing, but I was on a work conference in Vienna and got absolutely hammered at the hotel bar with some colleagues. Woke up in what I thought was my hotel room, but everything looked different. Turns out I'd somehow wandered into the wrong hotel, climbed 3 flights of stairs, and passed out in some random German businessman's room in Salzburg. He was surprisingly cool about it and even made me coffee before I caught the train back. Still have no idea how I got there. It's like a 2-hour drive. Spring break 2021, me and my buddy were road tripping through Europe. We stopped at this sketchy hostel near the Italian border, and I swear the guy said we were still in Switzerland. Woke up the next morning craving coffee and walked outside to find everything written in Italian. Turns out we'd crossed the border without realizing, and I technically slept in Italy for the first time. Not the most dramatic story, but hey, added another country to my list without even trying. This happened when my kids were babies. We were flying back from visiting my parents in Canada and had this nightmare layover in Iceland due to weather delays. The airline put us up in a hotel, but I was so sleep-deprived I literally didn't process where we were. Woke up at like 5 a.m., looked out the window, and saw this completely alien landscape, all black rocks and steam. For a solid 10 minutes, I thought I was having some kind of breakdown until I remembered the layover. The kids thought it was hilarious. Study abroad in London, spring semester, junior year. Went out drinking in Camden with some friends and somehow ended up on the Eurostar to Paris. I have literally zero memory of buying a ticket or getting on the train. Woke up in Gare du Nord station with the worst hangover of my life, my phone dead, and about 50 pounds left in my wallet. Had to call my program coordinator, trying to figure out how to get back. Never lived it down. My husband was deployed, and I was visiting him at his base in Germany. We went out for his birthday, and I guess I mixed my medications with alcohol like an idiot. Woke up in a hospital in France because apparently I had some kind of reaction, and they airlifted me to the nearest major medical facility. Spent 3 days there before they let me travel back. The French nurses were angels, though, and now I have the most random medical bill from Strasbourg. Caribbean cruise 2 years ago. Got food poisoning from the buffet, never again, and was basically unconscious for like 18 hours. Woke up, and we docked in Barbados instead of staying in Jamaica like the itinerary said. Ship had to make an emergency port change due to weather. I was so out of it I didn't even realize until I tried to use the Wi-Fi, and it said, "Welcome to Barbados." Missed the whole day, but at least I got to see a new island through the porthole. Burning Man 2019. Except it wasn't actually Burning Man, long story, but I ended up at this festival in the Mexican desert that I thought was some kind of pre-burn event. Woke up after 3 days of what I can only describe as controlled chaos to find out I was actually at this underground festival near Ensenada. Everyone spoke Spanish, and I'd been communicating through gestures and shared joints the whole time. Still one of the best weekends of my life, honestly. Bachelorette party in Tijuana. I know. We were supposed to stay on the U.S. side, but someone suggested we cross over for authentic margaritas. Next thing I remember is waking up in this tiny hotel room with mariachi music blasting outside. The bride was nowhere to be found. Turns out she'd made it back but left me behind. Had to figure out how to cross the border with no ID because I'd lost my wallet. Thank God for kind strangers and the U.S. consulate. Taking the kids to Niagara Falls, staying on the American side. My 7-year-old got sick during the night, so I took him to what I thought was the hotel clinic. Turns out in my panic, I'd driven across the Rainbow Bridge to the Canadian side. Didn't realize until the doctor asked for our health cards, and I'm like, "We're American." Kid was fine, but we spent the rest of the day in Canada because why not? Best accidental tourist day ever. Cancun with college friends. We were staying at one of those all-inclusive resorts, and I guess I wandered off from the group during some beach party. Woke up on a different beach with no idea where I was. Turns out I'd somehow made it to Cozumel, like actually took a ferry in my blackout state. Some local fishermen found me and helped me get back to the mainland. My friends were about to call the embassy. Never drinking tequila again. Okay, that's a lie, but still. Had a conference in Vancouver, booked the hotel online without really paying attention. Woke up for my 8 a.m. presentation and everything outside looked way too European. Turns out there's a Vancouver in Washington too, and that's where I'd booked my room. Missed the entire first day of the conference trying to get across the border and up to the right Vancouver. My boss was not amused, but at least I learned something about geography. Honeymoon in the Caribbean, hopping between islands. We were supposed to be in St. Lucia, but after a very long day of travel and maybe too much champagne on the plane, we just followed the crowd off the aircraft. Woke up the next morning and the hotel staff was speaking French. We were in Martinique. Honestly, didn't figure it out until we tried to pay for breakfast, and our credit card company called asking about charges in France. Spent 3 extra days there before catching another flight. High school senior trip to Montreal. Got separated from the group during some festival downtown and ended up following this group of university students who seemed to know where they were going. Woke up in Vermont at some farmhouse party. These college kids had driven back to their school in Burlington, and I just tagged along apparently. Had to call my teacher crying and explain why I was in a different country than where I was supposed to be. Almost didn't graduate because of that stunt. Visiting relatives in Detroit, decided to drive around and explore. GPS took me over some bridge, and I thought it was just another part of the city. Stopped at this Tim Hortons for coffee, and the cashier goes, "Welcome to Windsor," in this super cheerful Canadian accent. I had no idea I'd crossed into Canada. Spent the afternoon there because the coffee was better and everyone was so nice. Had to explain to U.S. Border Patrol why I didn't remember crossing over in the first place. Following this band around Europe, sleeping wherever. Was supposed to be at their show in Amsterdam, but woke up in someone's squat in Brussels. The band had changed venues last minute, and I just followed the crowd without checking. Ended up staying for 3 days because the Brussels underground music scene is insane. Sometimes the best adventures happen when you have no idea what you're doing. Gap year backpacking through Southeast Asia. Had been island hopping in Thailand and thought I was still there when I woke up on this beautiful beach. Started chatting with locals in my broken Thai, and they looked so confused. Turns out the ferry I'd taken while half asleep had gone to Malaysia. Spent 2 weeks there instead of my planned 3 days because I fell in love with the food and the people. My parents thought I'd been kidnapped. Corporate retreat in Toronto, sharing a room with my coworker who snores like a freight train. Around 3 a.m. I grabbed my pillow and went asleep in the rental car in the parking garage. Woke up and drove to what I thought was the conference center, but ended up at some community college in Buffalo. Took me 4 hours to figure out I'd driven back across the border in my sleep-deprived state. Conference call from the parking lot was awkward. Semester in Prague, took weekend trips all the time. Was supposed to meet friends in Vienna, but got on the wrong train. Apparently, there are multiple trains leaving around the same time. Woke up from my nap in Budapest. The conductor was very amused when I started panicking in broken Czech. Ended up spending the weekend there instead, and it was actually better than Vienna would have been. Sometimes mistakes work out. Dad was stationed in Germany when I was in high school. Went on a school trip to what I thought was another German city, but woke up in our hotel in Strasbourg, France. Teachers had mentioned crossing the border, but I wasn't paying attention during the bus ride. Everything looked so different, and everyone kept speaking French to me. I kept trying to respond in my terrible German until someone explained we weren't in Germany anymore. Geography was never my strong suit. My wife and I were doing one of those European river cruises for our 30th anniversary. I take medication that makes me really drowsy and apparently slept through 2 entire countries. Woke up thinking we were still in Austria, but we were already docked in Slovakia. Missed all of Hungary completely. My wife took pictures of me sleeping through 3 different countries. She still shows them to people at parties.